subcommittee coming up with different conditions to put into, just in general, to put into any people that come to us through ULURP for construction or for variance, wherever we can inject some sort of environmental good stuff in.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And so that the land use has kind of a list, and that whatever applies, they can apply to it, but we're not starting from scratch every time, so that there's kind of a standard of what our standards become. And I don't know, Steve and I were talking about a couple of things. I guess there's local law 97 that's already on the books that they could do.
Made some general categories in mind that be a start. With carbon emissions, and there's local law 97 on the books, or I guess by 2024, buildings have to achieve a certain amount of reduction in their climate footprint in new buildings. I'm not sure what the benchmark is for new buildings, but I feel like, just generally speaking, we could just make that a condition that the project comply with that. I don't know if we necessarily make suggestions, not limited to these suggestions, like geothermal and electrification and solar, et cetera, et cetera. If we need, more expert input on that, but generally speaking, I feel like we could, put, that could be one condition.
Yeah.
And then we were, in other areas, building materials, like, low carbon concrete, urging them, suggesting strongly that they consider that.
I guess there's a law being worked on that, but it hasn't been passed, and we can sort of jump and just say that something that we're looking for.
Yeah. And then we're, with wastewater and stormwater, I don't know if they're that, I noticed, with developers have to throw out that their project's LEED certified, and I guess it covers stormwater and wastewater to a degree, but I feel like it's really dated, the requirements for that in relation to what's happening with climate and climate, with the Climate Mobilization Act and the state requirements. They don't really mention climate in the law.
What would be the proper language for that?
You're talking about coming in compliance with or trying to help meet the goals the state set, Steve?
On climate, well, I think there's city, I really had city in mind with their Climate Mobilization Act, and then I haven't looked, I didn't look recently at the state act, which is a longer name, community something. But I feel like they have similar kind of milestones in mind, like 2030 and then either 2040 or 2050 for, I think, getting to 80% reduction.
What we're trying to do is get the developers who are building now or who are getting certified now to put this stuff into their building that's not required until whatever year it's required. Is that?
Yeah, and I think I want to check in like with Elizabeth Adams and others about what that 2024 deadline means. So if there's a project that begins next year, do they need to comply, or if projects that don't start till 2024, it's not really clear. But we can just, hey, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Welcome.
In terms of the wastewater, stormwater, is there language or is there a law that we're asking them to comply with, or is there something we can refer to with what we're asking?
Yeah, the city's looking at these new, I'm blanking on the name of it, what the intro is, but stormwater management rules in terms of how much, stormwater they have to capture on their site, but they're going to be recommending like a certain threshold of a property that's going to trigger that. So I think, one of the easier things, and, it's interesting, this is what they're doing in Gowanus. There's actually a meeting right now about it with DEP, but with the proposed rezoning in Gowanus, they want to ensure that there's a net zero increase to the combined sewer overflows in the area. And so I think there's a lot of ways to go. I think one is saying that that any new development cannot add to the existing combined sewer overflow problem. So basically what that means is they just have to manage all their stormwater on site. And I mean, I guess my question too is like how, or this list, is it things that we are like, we're going to vote no if you don't include these, or are these like, more principles that we would like to see installed? I mean, you know what I mean? It's going to be like a line between what they're obviously the developers don't really have to do any of this if it's recommendations, but I think sort of figuring that out would be useful. And certainly I do think there are things that we can include that, could be, useful sort of negotiating tools in that. But for stormwater management, I mean, that's another part of it too, is that you could say, we want you to not contribute or generate stormwater on your site. We could also, include things like we want new development to have some forms of green infrastructure as well, like a green roof or planted areas that provide not just stormwater management, but benefits for the ecology itself. So, all that gets, again, a little tricky depending on the site and what they're doing, but that's an idea.
Well, the one that's coming before us on Monday, is coming to the Land Use Committee, is the Acme Fish, which is their factory, their 4-story factory, and then the 11-story block-size building that they're putting. And when the developer came to the Land Use Committee as sort of a preliminary meeting, and he was asked what he was doing for the environment, he went blank, and then he said that his building would be LEED certified, and that was about it. And so I think what we want to do is have things like the stormwater and the green infrastructure and the local law 97, just have a list of things that we see as being necessary. Maybe these can be, we approve on the condition that A, B, C, D, and just have that listed. And then if it's a building without any property, I don't know, excess property to plant or whatever, I mean, we can adjust it. We can site condition it, but to at least have the Land Use Committee have something that when a building comes before CB1, what's being asked, and just to kind of standardize it.
Another suggestion would be about like gray water systems in buildings. I don't think there's a lot of incentive in New York City, but there's plenty of examples where and I think, some of the higher levels of LEED certification include this, but basically, so you are really minimizing the output of wastewater from your site. So either, having facilities in place that are, repurposing some of the water on site, whether it's rainwater or whether it's sanitary water as well, so like water from the sinks is actually being used to flush the toilets. So on and so forth. So there's a whole sort of range, a suite of options that you could do. But I think, basically, highlighting the need to consume less water and generate less sanitary sewage as well would be useful. I mean, it's interesting because projects, this is an interesting time to have this conversation because, the River Street, the Two Trees project is, they're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff and, incorporating their own, like they're doing their own wastewater treatment on site, which, say what you will about the development overall, it's a pretty, that's a pretty like forward thinking system to implement. And there's very few places in the city that have that. So, yeah.
So a gray water system falls under the wastewater stormwater, and that's all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's the wastewater, stormwater, and then there's the green infrastructure. That's a separate one, right? Separate.
Yeah,
Is that all part, or does the green infrastructure contribute to the capturing of the wastewater? Is that?
Hey, Jan, just, we're proposing environmental conditions for
No, I
land
think
use.
I think it's brilliant, but
Yeah.
that would include housing too, right? I mean, and all this renovation in general, you're coming up with something like the liquor licenses where we need across the board, we're asking a set of questions for every kind of development in the Williamsburg Greenpoint community. Right? I mean, you're
Yeah.
not just taking.
Well, it's whatever comes before it. I think that where we have a say in it is if it's ULURP or if there's a variance that's being asked for.
Yeah, but I mean, yes, okay. I think that's a brilliant thing to do.
And so we're talking about carbon emissions, which is complying with local law 97, using building material, low carbon concrete as a building material, which has lower emissions. And then in terms of the wastewater, stormwater, it's these things that Rose was talking about. And green infrastructure. And
Yeah, and then I had a proposed item would be implementing design to minimize bird collisions. And I found there is a law in the books.
Mm-hmm.
The bird-friendly building materials law. And it's basically buildings have what a bird would, encounter as a void or, just a clear area that they would need to format their facade or windows in a certain way that would minimize the number of impacts.
And is it actually a law, Steve?
Yeah, it's a law that went into effect October 1st of this year.
Are there other things in the Gowanus rezoning that we can steal? I mean, are there other things that are written into?
Well, it's still proposed, right? Is it even?
But even proposed, is there anything else that's in that?
That's the main one that I'm aware of is dealing with the stormwater, but yeah, I can.
Is there language, Willis, that is in the that's already been written that we can just take?
Yeah, I can go see in what the most sort of concise thing they have is.
Great.
Another topic I think would be interesting to get into, and this might be maybe it would be controversial for some aspects, but would be thinking about like the transportation issues of a development. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to consider that, but one would, maybe that's impossible, but considering how materials are delivered to a site,
Sure.
for a construction site, I mean, certainly there's not a lot of options aside from trucking.
Yeah, but I know Janie Poole's working on a BART initiative to truck in and instead of trucking in building materials.
I mean, it could also be like, I know there's still problems with 53-foot trailers and stuff like that. So there could be language about ensuring, how the deliveries are happening or even there's places in Greenpoint, right, where like Greenpoint Landing, where we've seen like 20 concrete trucks lined up in a row.
Yeah.
And, they're all just sitting there idling on the street, which is not good. So maybe there's a way to sort of consolidate that into a point about, ensure that, I don't know, there's a, a plan in place to minimize the impacts of trucking, bringing materials to the site. And then, of course, the other one is, this is maybe a little off topic, but would be, or not directly, I don't know what we're looking at, but, all the parking requirements and getting into that sort of conversation that, you can make the argument by having fewer parking spaces per building. And obviously we have some outdated parking requirements for a lot of development that would reduce car ownership or dependence. I know some people on the board would probably have, issues with that, but
Yeah, they do. We've encountered them. I think one of them is right here.
Well, I've kind of given up.
Okay.
I figure that ship has sailed.
well, so I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking of like other sort of tangential issues that are environmental. So I don't know.
Building more green.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but also, with Acme Fish, you're dealing with a factory. So maybe there are issues there. They every day have idling trucks,
Right.
with their getting ready for their pickups or their deliveries.
Was there a
And-
law passed about idling trucks? Wasn't there something?
Yeah,
That's-
yeah, there's like a 3-minute rule during certain weather conditions.
Yeah.
But it kind of relying on citizen, citizen capture of the violation and potentially reaping part of a bonus or something from that. Yeah, but I think there is.
But you're talking about now re-looking at everything within the community and adding a new set of indicators from the environment, which I think has been long overdue.
Mhm.
So it's in the parks too. All the stuff with the Parks Department. I mean, we have to think through. I think it's terrific because I was thinking about that all the time because I work, as I said, internationally. We do a lot of stuff with grassroots groups around the world. And I thought, well, why are they not doing that in Williamsburg? So I'm excited.
That's when there was a panel discussion about a week or two ago from North Brooklyn Parks. It had, the former president of Brooklyn Bridge Park, former vice president of the High Line, and, Catherine Thompson from Friends of Bushland Park. And the theme was Laura Hoppin's trying to connect, doesn't seem to have control, unmute video or not. I'm going to log off. Oh, that's too bad.
Huh.
Just, value capture.
She signed in as an attendee. That was her problem.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if she's still there.
You have her telephone
I
number?
think she is.
It is still there.
I'm gonna try to make her a panelist. So she's on.
I think she logged off.
You need to have, are you coming up with votes tonight that you need to have a quorum?
No, what we're doing, the land use committee meeting is going to meet on Monday, and the Acme Fish Project, which is a major
No, I
development.
understood that, but you
So
don't,
we want to have it for them, and then just to have the list in general to be available.
well, the board meets on Tuesday. I mean, I assume you're going to want to put this in your report, the list of
Right,
indicators.
and what I was thinking is if we don't come up with a definitive list tonight, we can present it to the board and then not vote on it till we have all our language, all our ducks in a row.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea to say, this is the thinking that's going on. You're open to hear from the other committees.
The thought at the land use committee was that maybe the transportation committee can make a similar list and just so that when a developer comes to CB1, they know this is what they're going to be told. These are the things these are our standards.
Right. So I was saying, well, the flow of these proposals, would it go to the board for approval before it goes to land use, or should it go to land use and they accept it or not? And then the full board.
Well, are you asking the land use committee to adopt them also? I mean, I think we need more of this kind of multi-committee work. And particularly all this environmental stuff that we're so far behind on with the air and the the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
In a toxic community. So we don't need more fragmentation. So I think you could ask them to adopt that
mhm.
and then
Is it the
still,
land use committee that would adopt it or the full board that would adopt it?
no, what I'm understanding, I'm not pushing it.
Right.
Last time I pushed something with you, I ended up with 3 months of bylaw work with Steve. So I'm very careful now. So my statement is that what I like, and I'm the new kid here, so you can chastise me, is that I like the idea that you're brainstorming the issues and integrating them and pulling them together, but you know that you still have more thinking to do. You're on a goal of creating a set of indicators that are going to be used for all development initiatives in the Williamsburg Greenpoint community. And I think that, I don't know if anybody has that. Maybe they do, but I think it's a great idea. So I would not have it as a closed off thing for a while, but I would ask the land use committee, because of the Ask Me Fish thing, to adopt these indicators that you have right now.
Well, can I just interject here for a second? The Land Use Committee, a while back, had developed a questionnaire to go out to all the applicants, and they also asked certain environmental concerns to be addressed. So that was the full board agreed to that question many moons ago. So I can see, it being enhanced, taking that
Maybe we
questionnaire
can,
and
update
enhance it. Yeah.
Well, it just seems to me that's good, and that this committee now is getting really moving, right, on the whole thing. And because the Women's Committee certainly has been talking for the last year with, we have Jane and all the same people, been talking about all these environmental issues and the fact that they're fragmented and it's not clear how people are actually moving on the toxic air, the toxic soil, all that. So I just think that this is beginning to impact on what the different committees do, so that the environmental issues are never buried. Is a very good direction to go, but I don't think you have to have another board approval now on Tuesday. But I do think your Monday thing, they should have to agree to those things.
yeah. Well, that's what we had talked to Dell about it. Both Steve and I are on the land use committee.
Yeah.
And so that's what triggered it. And then I think our environmental, on Tuesday, when we give the committee report, we can talk about how it's information, then maybe other people will have ideas of other things.
Right. I'll just bring them out and ask other committees and people that are there to forward thoughts to you.
Right.
I think that that's a good idea, that you want people, because the other thing is that you have, a lot of you, of course, are environmentally involved for a long time in the neighborhood, but there are all the different organizations it would be good if they joined your committee. They can join and not be members of the community board, like the Women's Committee. You get more live, more lively people, right?
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So the Women's Committee wanted to meet with you also. So we'll put that on there, because is one of our topics. So we can look at how you just got to say that this is the kind of general direction that things are going in other committees, like you said, transportation, the Women's Committee, the ULIP committee. And when you look at housing and public housing, which is Rabbi Niederman, all this work is going on with public housing. And all this stuff bad that's been happening for years at the public housing stuff. So I'm just saying, everybody, it will open them all up.
Yeah.
I think that's good. And you can just be a monitoring group that looks at how these different committees are performing.
I like that. That sounds.
That's what because in general, we have to change what the community board is anyway. But one of the things we are and should be, and use the language more, since I see all friends over here, is we're a monitoring group. We're looking at what's going on in the neighborhood and pointing it out. We're a watchdog group for the community, what's working and not working. We're not just an advisory group that, well, if they don't like our advice, we just passively go back and sit down. We don't do that anyway.
Yeah. Um, yeah, maybe we, in our report to the board, we could just suggest that this is this is a tool that
Right.
can be used.
You're
Yeah.
creating a tool and you want everybody's input now. That's radical enough.
So let's see where we get. But
Right.
Steve, you started to talk about the parks, that the forum that was held for the parks, that,
Yeah, well, yeah, with somebody from the High Line, from Brooklyn Bridge Park, and then Catherine Thompson from Friends of Bushwick Park, which is saying both the High Line and in North Brooklyn, it was a missed opportunity to capture value from the developments to support the parks and other infrastructure in the neighborhood. I mean, the High Line did get some value capture, but I guess there was a lot more they could have gotten because there was a rezoning of West Chelsea. So, but I mean, that ship has sailed. Though Catherine and I we were kind of brainstorming about how to do, like, get a park improvement district going or something. But
One of the things that came up always in the past is the issue of amenities. So when you're talking about capturing something from a development, some standards about amenities can be practiced. Like you need to contribute X amount of trees, X amount of open space, X amount of whatever is going on at that time. There may be something new that comes up, but amenities is very important, and it can play a big role when you're doing land use development. Because don't forget, we could ask for anything, but they're going to judge us based on certain guidelines that when you are qualifying and quantifying the development for a BSA action, and there's 5 findings that you have to meet. If anything falls outside those findings, and we found this out when we did the 197A plan, is they'll address and say, we don't have to do that. That doesn't belong here.
and that all is triggered from the environmental impact statement, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
where those standards are listed.
But sometimes that's you're talking about when they do the scoping meeting,
Yeah.
and they come up with issues. I mean, I'm just saying that when you do this, you should look at all those criteria, make sure you build them in, because that's going to strengthen your request for an amenity or for a give back to the community.
But even we've been looking for a long time. I'm sorry, I don't know who's sharing, and I'm jumping in, so can cut me off. Is that we've been looking at all these movies and TV, and you remember those days when we had all that stuff going on all the time, all over the neighborhood, all the parking, the illegal parking by these truckers over there, all that stuff that we keep talking about, and that are destroying the neighborhood, but we never make sure that there's any money from the cost of the damage of those institutions going back into the community. And the one thing that people would accept, because people don't want to get into a fight over, does it go for this CDC or that one, but parks, the whole environment, that's affected by these movies and TV and trucking and parking and all that, setting up a kind of fund where that money could go, I think makes real sense, because the cost to Williamsburg from from Newtown Creek and the whole thing is really unbelievable.
There's less movie making though going on, isn't there?
Well, there's nothing now.
Yeah.
I'm saying this is not the time, but we could be prepared. They have.
No, but even pre-COVID, it seemed to have died down. It seemed
Really? God. They moved over to Power Street, Trina.
Okay. Left Greenpoint. They were big in Greenpoint.
not over in North
They don't want you
Greenpoint.
anymore. You're not diverse enough.
What do we want to say anything? So with the Acme Fish development, they are making a factory too. There's the big development. I think a lot of the points that we made, we can apply to that. But are there any points specific to the factory that we want to environmentally? Is there anything?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. It's tricky to weigh in on some of the operations, especially if you have, in the future, if you have developments that are like 50 Kent, where it's not prescribed what the
Right.
industrial uses are going to be, I don't know. I think it's a little tricky. I don't know. I think,
Well, here it's
going back to
definitely,
the trucking is kind of the
Right.
easiest.
Yeah, but are we
avenue.
getting those good jobs and the factory jobs that are making the healthy environmental things? Or is that what we're getting?
well, they're going to keep Acme Fish in the neighborhood, and they're going to continue to smoke the fish in a brand new 4-story
I
building.
know. I mean, but in addition to the fish, we want to get some of these jobs, right? That everybody's talking about are going to have to be here for solar and all that environmentally good stuff. That's all. We just should mention jobs once in a while. Every time you talk about the environment, if you don't throw in jobs.
Well, they're building, the 7-story building is an office building.
No, I got that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
just saying.
I think Acme said that they, like, overwhelming majority of their workforce is local.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so, but I think, we can, the Acme Fish Rubenstein thing is somewhat unique, that you have an office building and you have a factory that, we could say, adjust the conditions accordingly for the two parts of the project, because I feel like industrial, they're very similar in terms of the environmental impact, but how they achieve the reduction, I think, really varies. But in terms of how much energy they use to, process the fish, they must use a lot of water, I would assume. So, go there separately with Acme and then with the office building potentially.
Steve,
Yes.
with your experience with the environment in that section of the neighborhood, is there anything that they may not pick up that should be looked at since it's so close to where Bushwick Inlet Park is? Is there any environmental issues that like maybe underground?
Well, it's just more, we asked them about shadows, and they said they've performed a shadow study and it does not impact Bushwick Inlet.
But they will be doing demolition to
Correct.
build new, and they will have to go down and do the foundation work. So is there any key points there that maybe you might want to include that they should explore and make sure that is there something environmentally that they need to look out for more than they may have done if they just file a straight filing to build new?
Well, just in terms of like just in terms of, they're with demo and if they're excavating soil and then driving piles, just minimizing the impact, just designating what the truck staging area is and the truck route and, hours of pile driving, air monitoring, et cetera. But I feel like that, and I don't know if there's going to be, they need remediation. I don't know if they have to do remediation first.
Yeah.
Of where the office building is. So, yeah.
It doesn't hurt to mention all that. I mean, that can be one of the points that we make when there's new construction.
Yeah, because people, just construction fatigue is just, people are way beyond their threshold with this in this neighborhood.
So truck staging and truck route, the hours of the pile driving, air monitoring.
Yeah.
So that can be another point that we make.
Yeah, and also just even not with construction, just with Acme's general operation. Just they said they have idling trucks, next to on the street regularly. Can they minimize that?
That's a big thing.
Yeah.
One of the things I remember with a lot of the areas that had food manufacturing is that the vehicles have to run because they're refrigerated units.
That's a good point.
So you might want to look at how they're addressing that type of trucking.
Okay. I think we've got a pretty good list that we can start as a starting point. I wanted to leave time to talk about the Newtown Creek, what the National Grid wants to build on the Newtown Creek, the generators or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a great start, and I don't know, we can also come back and add stuff to that list. So let me post. Real quick in the chat, Trina, I posted language
Well, do
that.
we need to vote on this draft, or is it just like a work in progress? Or
I think it's a work in progress, and I think that's how we should present it to the land use committee for this round, and to the board, like what Jan said, and then say that this is what we're doing, and then see what other people want to add to it, and not be at a point where
okay, but I guess we say we're all in agreement with this draft, right? That there wasn't, or whatever. So
Yeah.
The language I posted there is mostly stolen from the Gowanus Canal Conservancy in regards to what's happening in Gowanus. So I just modified
Could you
it a little
email
bit.
it to me? Could you please email it to me as well?
Yeah.
At one point, that'd be.
So, hey, Eric, you're muted.
Sorry.
Hi, Eric. No problem.
Hi. I thought this was happening next week for some reason. I got it all twisted. I'm sorry. Anyway, hi, everybody.
Hi.
Okay.
hey,
So right now the National Grid is applying. I put a link in the chat here. They're applying for this permit to modify some of the operations at their Greenpoint facility that's on Vandervoort, Maspeth Avenue, and we're pretty concerned about it. When I say we, Newtown Creek Alliance, we're working with Sane Energy and a lot of the people that have been involved with the pipeline work, fighting against the North Brooklyn pipeline, and we've been pretty concerned about the state of this site for a long time. It's incredibly massive when you look at it on the map. It's like 100 plus acres, and the land is highly polluted. I'm sure you all remember this. I wasn't living here. The old the Maspeth gas holders that were there that were demolished in 2001.
That's where my kids played Little League. The Little League field was right next to all that.
Yeah, that has me worried. People hanging in near that site. So,
It's still there.
yeah, the Little League field is still there. So
Toxic Avengers.
yeah. So we've had a lot of concerns about the state of the site and also its relationships to the creek, because a lot of the pollution that's in the creek came from there historically. So anyways, what they're looking to do is to increase their operations there, and specifically they're adding to install 2 new compressed natural gas injection heaters and 2 new vaporizers. And partially what that does is it seems like it's triggering that they're going to be releasing more air emissions from the site because of this. Again, the permit is a little dense, and we haven't gone into like the nitty gritty of it. What we've asked the state to extend the comment period, because right now it is December. Well, on the website it says December 11th. They said in email they would extend it to December 22nd, but we still feel like that's not really a sufficient amount of time. They just announced this a few weeks ago, so we don't really have an idea of what this means in terms of air quality. It's in an industrial area, but it is literally 1 block from housing, and especially public housing at Cooper Park. So we're trying. Yeah.
Willis, will the end product require trucking or shipping to the end point?
So yeah, the permit doesn't explicitly say that, but that's one of the big concerns, is that they are building their way towards shipping LNG in and out, which currently isn't allowed in the city. And so that's one of the big concerns about the expansion at this treatment plant, and also some of the stuff that's been happening with the pipeline about They're basically just increasing their infrastructure to move gas through the region. So this permit doesn't specifically say anything about trucking LNG. It does say this: with this application, the 2 new CNG heaters will supplement natural gas supply by injecting CNG, which is compressed natural gas, which is legal to transport, by injecting CNG delivered by trucks as needed during during periods of peak demand. So the permit does explicitly say that. Again, we don't really know what that means in terms of, what an increase in truck traffic will be. But it's pretty, it's sort of this more egregious approach. The 2 new vaporizers will exhaust their individual stacks and are proposed to meet the increased demand for natural gas. And Eric's kind of shaking his head. There's not increases in demand, and the national grid, as part of the state's requirements, needs to reduce their capacity. And so, folks at St. Energy, and we certainly share this concern that this is a ploy for them to include this in the rate case so they can, charge more money for their infrastructure and increase their profits. So it's, and the same thing too, all this language about peak demand. I think last year there was 1 day of whatever peak, what they qualify as peak usage. So, we're on a track where we're getting away from natural gas use, and yet National Grid continues to increase the infrastructure. And so, I think the fact that given the historic problems and like hazards and burdens that this facility has placed on the community by completely poisoning the creek, by already creating air pollution, by leaving it as a toxic brownfield for the majority of their facility, they want to expand this on while not even addressing those is really problematic. So certainly the community board should submit comments. We're really hoping that they will extend this deadline again. We've been talking with a lot of the elected officials who are all, very concerned about this. And, what we want is them to expand this comment period and then to also have a public hearing so that also DEC can explain, in more layperson's terms, what is going on here, and what it means. So
do you think it makes sense for the community board to be asking for the comment period to be expanded and for the public meeting, or to get into the nitty-gritty about what we don't like about it?
I think for right now, especially considering when we have a board meeting next week, I don't think there's any way that we can get together a reasonable comment letter. So I do think that's a really easy thing for us to do right now, is to send a letter. If community board sends a letter to DEC asking those 2 things, that we need an extended comment period. One, because it's like almost insufficient time for us to even go through a process of submitting comments, and we need to have another round of meetings. And also given the fact that it's the holidays and it's, people are dealing with a global pandemic, and highlighting that it's, there's been serious concern from the community board about the recent, expansion of natural gas infrastructure in our district, and we need to better understand this. So asking for an extension to the comment period and a public hearing.
I'm sorry, I missed it. When did the period begin?
November 10th.
So a month? Really?
Yeah.
That seems short for a public comment period. Usually it's 90 days.
30 days.
Not 90 days, but a month and a half or something like that.
Yeah. So I think asking for 90 days is totally reasonable from the start.
Yeah, and we had Thanksgiving in between there and everything else.
It's insane. So what's the other thing? Oh, the other thing, Marie, maybe you can, I don't think the community board even got notice of this.
Yeah, that was my other question. Did it come through in one of the notice? Because
don't-
there's a lot of DOT stuff that comes through that doesn't come through the board. And if I wasn't on like the regional thing, I wouldn't even see it.
If it wasn't forwarded, we haven't received it.
Yeah, they're definitely, because I've been watching for National Grid too. I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, so I think that's another, in the criticism to DEC or whatever in our letter, just to remind them that, they need to do real outreach about this stuff, and the minimum is contacting the community board.
Willis, do you want to draft just a letter saying, rather than me paraphrasing poorly what
Yeah.
you just said?
It'll be
draft
really
something?
quick. It'll be a paragraph.
Yeah.
And
So if you want to draft a little blurb for the committee report and then whatever the letter is we want to send. Or do we need to give the language for the letter, Marie, or just that we want a letter sent?
Well, I would think that if you can't agree on all the points at this time, but you want to extend the period, I think that you make the request to extend the comment period and to beef it up with some meaningful language. Why?
Right.
So you don't have to put all your eggs in one basket right now, but you have to pull out the colored ones and say, this is the one we need to look at.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
right.
So that's great.
So yeah, if we agree, I think for the purpose of this meeting, and I'll send the follow up to you. But yeah, I think we send a letter asking for a comment period of 90 days and a public hearing with DEC to discuss the permit.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that, you guys?
Why not?
All in favor?
I make a motion
Okay.
to approve the issuing this letter to DEC, right? Or National Grid, DEC.
DEC.
Ask for extension and a hearing.
So does someone want to second it? Am I allowed to second
Eric
it?
did. Eric did.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And okay. And Jan, are you still with us? Do you know
But I
what's-
got a call.
Oh, hi.
Go ahead. I have too.
So Jan, we
Yeah,
just,
I'm with you. Goodbye, Arlene.
Bye.
I am with you.
okay, we just voted to send,
Okay, bye.
Environmental issues, all those
Oh, I got
storms.
them too. We're
Anyway,
building the housing on 2 new programs. Anyway,
Who was that?
Jan, are you in favor of the motion?
if you are all in favor of it, I'm in favor of it.
You're with us? Okay. Great.
Okay.
I think I think we're good. I think does anyone else, is there anything else? I think in January, let's have a really organized, bigger meeting with a longer agenda.
Excuse me, am I on?
What?
Who is running? Are you ready for nominations for officers on Tuesday?
Well, we haven't gotten our agenda yet, so
The agenda's coming out. I just finished it.
Okay, but that's going to be on the agenda, right, Marie?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so that's it. I hope that people are considering, after all this, that we don't have the same people and that doesn't mean it's bad. They've been good, but we need to always have change. And I think we have to look at term limits sometime.
yes.
Yeah. Is there any update on the implementation of term limits that passed, like whenever that was, that 2 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I've always wondered about that. I don't know.
I don't think
Are you
anybody's.
talking about the borough president's appointments?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can't answer to that. That's something that has to come from them.
Well, what about the councilman's appointments?
I'm sorry?
So the borough president and the councilman's appointments, or the people appointed by the council person different than
From what I understand, the process is the borough president makes the appointments in consultation with whoever the council people are representative of the area. Some people have 2 council people, some people have 3. So usually it's half and half. but it's all up to the borough president.
But the term limits, it's now,
The term limits, they haven't
terms, right?
told us. They
I think
haven't
it's
told
5
us.
terms, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
Didn't they pass 5 terms? You could.
I have not seen anything.
I thought it was 4,
I
like 8 years.
personally have not seen it.
Okay, I thought it was 10, but okay, 10 years. All right, whatever.
10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
it's late. Bye.
Thanks, Brennan.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Marie. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jan.
Bye. See you Tuesday.